The podcasting technology of NORML is made possible by Red Aphid Interactive Media. More information at redaphid.com. And distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. This is your daily audio stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular audio podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about the show at our website, NORMLAudiostash.com. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. Welcome back here to the Audio Stash today. It is Tuesday, November 20th. I'm your host, Chris Goldstein. Take a moment to join us here at NORML. Help us end marijuana prohibition in America. Just visit norml.org to make your donation or join NORML today. Folks, we have some very important daily news today. We're going to speak with NORML Senior Policy Analyst Paul Armentano with an in-depth discussion of our news item today. And this story has gotten some mainstream media play yesterday and today. Administration of the non-psychoactive compound cannabidiol inhibits the spread of breast cancer. We'll have that story first thing today in our daily breaking news and an in-depth discussion of this new science by Paul Armentano, NORML Senior Policy Analyst. You can find out more about the anti-cancer and anti-tumoral properties of cannabis and cannabinoids in the report Emerging Clinical Applications for Cannabis and Cannabinoids. There's a link to it right up on our website today at normalaudiostash.com. So, important daily news today. Also, in our Government at Work Tuesday segment, we're going to speak with Ray Warren, the Director of State Policies at the Marijuana Policy Project, and talk a bit about the hot year 2008 is going to be for marijuana reform around the country. Also in the program today, we got some Cowboy Junkies for you from the Independent Online Distribution Alliance. A whole lot of great bands posting up some tracks up there, and we're going to have some new talent for you here. We got some tracks in from some folks who are at the American Marijuana Music Awards in Brooklyn, New York last month. So we're going to get some tracks from some stony American artists, some upcoming talent here on the Audio Stash in the future. Today we got some Cowboy Junkies for you from the Independent Online Distribution Alliance. Also in the program this week, tomorrow, our Cannabis Science segment with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. Also tomorrow, we'll speak with Bernie Ellis in Tennessee. We've got a Thanksgiving Day show for you, full of music and comedy, a lot of good information as well. And on Friday, we've got our interview with Johnny Richter from the Cottonmouth Kings. That was a live sit-down interview we did last Sunday in Philadelphia. And we also got an interview with Big B. He's on the Suburban Noise record label as well. So Big B and Johnny Richter here on the Audio Stash Friday. And, of course, we'll have some Cottonmouth Kings and Big B tracks for you Friday as well. Now, let's open up our stash today. We've got important breaking news. Breaking news today from NORML. Pot compound may offer non-toxic alternative to chemotherapy. From San Francisco, California. Administration of the non-psychoactive cannabinoid cannabidiol, or CBD, inhibits the spread of breast cancer. According to preclinical data published this month in the journal Molecular Cancer Therapeutics. Investigators at the California Pacific Medical Center Research Institute report that CB1 limits the activity in breast cancer metastasis gene ID1, Researchers noted that CBD downregulated ID1 expression in human breast cancer cells more effectively than did the administration of the cannabinoids THC, CBG or cannabigerol, and CBN cannabinol, and or the synthetic cannabinoid agonist WIN 55212-2. Quote, cannabidiol offers hope of a non-toxic therapy that could treat aggressive forms of cancer without any of the painful side effects of chemotherapy, close quote, lead researcher Sean McAllister told the BBC News. Investigators added that CBD could potentially moderate the spread of other common forms of cancers, including colon cancer and prostate cancer, by modulating similar pathways. Researchers at Italy's Biomolecular and Chemical Institute had previously reported that CBD administration moderated the spread of breast cancer cells by triggering apoptosis or programmed cell death. Separate studies have demonstrated that cannabinoids can inhibit cancer cell growth in animals and in culture on a wide range of tumoral cell lines, including pancreatic carcinoma and lung carcinoma. Most recently, investigators at Madrid's Complutense University School of Biology reported in the British Journal of Cancer that THC administration decreases recurrent glioblastoma multiforme or brain tumor growth in patients diagnosed with the disease. Previous preclinical trials on CBD have shown the compound to be neuroprotective against alcohol-induced brain damage, stroke, and mad cow disease. More information about this story will be published on NORML's website at norml.org. Joining us today to discuss this important new research further is NORML's senior policy analyst Paul Armentano. Paul is author of the report Emerging Clinical Applications for Cannabis and Cannabinoids, where you can learn more about the anti-cancer and anti-tumoral properties of cannabinoids. We have links to it on our website at normalaudiostash.com. Paul, welcome back to the program today. This is a major story. It really has received a lot of attention already.
Sure. What's really interesting about this is that it's finally getting some mainstream media play. I was quite pleased to wake up on Monday and see that this story was being covered on Fox News, CBS News, ABC News, the BBC, and almost all the major wire services. UPI covered it. I did not see a report about it on Reuters, but that doesn't mean they did not cover it. If they didn't, they would have certainly been one of the only major news markets, not to pick up on this story. That to me is huge. I would imagine that for most of the public, this will be the first time they were ever exposed to this notion that marijuana or compounds in marijuana are certainly not cancer-forming, but in fact can have anti-cancer properties. As you know, many of us have been aware of this finding now for several decades, but this is really one of the first and only times that I can recall this notion being picked up by the major media and publicized.
And again, Paul, this study is looking at the use of cannabinoids as an actual cancer treatment, not just for nausea or the other associated conditions, but to actually attack the tumors of some of the most deadly cancers there are.
Right. What researchers are trying to do is they are using compounds in marijuana to go after the cancer itself. And this research has really begun earnestly about a decade ago. And what they've discovered over the years is a number of things. What they have found is that there are compounds in marijuana that seem to cut off the blood supply to certain malignant tumors. They've also found that there's compounds in marijuana that seem to selectively target cancer cells and persuade those cells to actually turn on themselves and commit what they call cell suicide while leaving the healthy cells alone. What's newsworthy about this trial is that for the first time, they have also discovered that a compound in marijuana seems to limit the activity of a particular gene that scientists have identified and believe that the overactivity of that gene is what allows malignant cancer cells to spread from the tumor to the rest of the body. And what they have discovered is that by shutting down the activity of that gene, they can halt the spread of certain aggressive forms of malignant cancers. So this, once again, we now have a third potential method of action whereby cannabinoids can halt the spread of cancer.
And if there weren't these restrictions on research in cannabis and cannabinoids, could this type of experimental cancer treatment actually be used soon in humans?
One would think, particularly in this study, because they were looking at cannabidiol. Cannabidiol is not psychoactive. It's non-toxic. There's really no reason that we couldn't be studying the way this drug interacts in humans today. It has an ideal safety profile for use within the human population, and even as the researchers in this study note, for long-term use in the human population, because they talk about the fact that cancer reoccurs in so many people that they would ideally like a drug that shuts down this gene, but that they can give to patients long-term to stop the cancer from coming back. CBD fits that safety profile. It's almost criminal that this drug has not been studied in humans with cancer to this point, and that the overwhelming majority of this research has been limited to either animal testing or looking at cells in a petri dish.
Do you also think that this new research will prompt more American institutions to look at cannabinoids for treating cancer?
I think certainly they will. Unfortunately, they've been looking further at this now almost for 30 years. The first study I'm aware of, which actually took place at the University of Virginia, took place in the mid-'70s, where they found that THC at that time seemed to halt the proliferation of certain cancerous tumors in mice. We haven't advanced a whole lot since then. We have a better understanding of how cannabinoids interact with cancer and cancer cells, but this research has not advanced from the preclinical level to the clinical level the way I'm certain it would have if we were talking about any other drug other than marijuana. At this point, I'm aware of only one pilot study that has ever looked at the administration of cannabinoids in humans with cancer. And that study took place a couple of years ago in Europe, and I do believe is being followed up on. But, this progress has moved at a snail's pace. And as everyone is aware, cancer is a disease that needs to be fought head on. It is certainly not fair to withhold the investigation of what could be a life-saving drug for more than 3 decades so that a number of politicians can, bully from the pulpit and say that they're tough on marijuana. And that's what's going on.
Now, Paul, here on the program, we're often talking about what we can do to support legislation or legal changes regarding cannabis. But cancer is something that really affects so much of the country, and we would all want a better treatment that could replace the horribly toxic radiation and chemical therapies in place today. So how do we get the medical establishment to understand that we all want them to follow up on this important cannabinoid research?
I really do think that we're the American Cancer Society to take a more prominent and outspoken position advocating for the further research and use of cannabinoids as potential anti-cancer agents, that you would see a furthering of this research and you would see these sort of studies take a much higher profile when they are published. And I would encourage people who are particularly interested in this aspect of the issue to really lobby that body and make them aware of the research that's taking place and make them aware of how important this is. The American Cancer Society is supposed to represent the interests of its members and its constituents, and certainly the interests of the patient community that suffers from this disease and the family members of that patient community. And it's really important for them to tell the American Cancer Society that they want them to take a stand on this issue. The American Cancer Society has been almost absent from this debate, and that's really unfortunate, and that really needs to change.
And is it politics that comes into play with these very large medical advocacy groups?
It certainly seems to. The National Society that represents multiple sclerosis patients in this country has also been either absent from the debate or they have opposed the use of medical marijuana. There again, a patient community that has one of the strongest needs for the use of marijuana is not being adequately represented by the lobbying body that is supposed to represent them. And I think it's very clear that politics are indeed at play. I would imagine many of those same politics apply to the American Cancer Society as well. At best, you get some tepid comments from the American Cancer Society talking about marijuana as an anti-nauseant. I don't believe I've ever seen this organization go on record and even discuss the potential anti-cancer properties of marijuana. And like I said, these have been known among many of us now for over 3 decades.
Oh, very interesting. And I'm sure we're going to talk more about this here in the future, Paul. Many thanks for joining us to talk about this story today.
No problem, Chris. Good to be here.
Thank you again, Paul. Paul Armentano is NORML's Senior Policy Analyst. You can contact him with questions or comments at paul@NORML, NORML.org. More information about this story and cannabidiole's anti-cancer properties will be available on NORML's website at NORML.org.
What's up, y'all? This is Soja, and you are right now listening to NORML's Daily Audio Stash. Big up yourself.
And now it's time for our Government at Work segment, where we look at different pieces of state legislation and reform efforts happening around the country. Government at Work segment today, we're going to speak with Ray Warren. He's the Director of State Policies at the Marijuana Policy Project. Ray was a state elected official in North Carolina, where he also served as a judge. We heard Ray on the legislative panel at the NORML 2007 conference here on the Audio Stash, and he's been here on the program before. Ray, welcome back here to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Great to speak with you today, Ray. Now it's a pretty quiet time of year. Things are winding down in 2007, but 2008 is looking like it's going to be pretty hot for reform.
Yeah, I think we're going to make some real progress next year. Of course, this is the off year for state legislatures. They're all in session in the even-numbered years. Only some of them will be working next year. But I think we're going to make great progress in Illinois. We're going to have a good effort there. We've put together a good team on the ground. John Walker, who is the head of a new Illinois Compassion Network in Springfield, will be helping us. We've hired a couple of really great lobbyists. We work with our usual allies in NORML and otherwise, but Illinois is probably the state next year that is most likely to move towards some kind of compassionate policy for medical marijuana.
And even though it may be a quiet off year for policy votes, there still seems to be a lot of individual committee hearings happening in state legislatures around the country, some interaction with those state elected officials to keep things moving forward.
Well, that's absolutely right. And there are a few things still hanging out there. The New York Assembly has passed a very good medical marijuana bill, and we believe Governor Spitzer would sign it. The Senate in New York will be in session next year. So far, the Senate has not killed our bill. The leadership says they're in favor of it. So we're certainly looking at New York as a possibility if we can move the leadership to bring it to the floor. Likewise in Minnesota. In Minnesota, we've passed one chamber of the legislature and all of the committees in the other chamber, so we also have a possibility in Minnesota. In other news, in California, for example, it's my understanding that activists, and I think we're going to be part of this in cooperation with NORML and the other allies, will be pushing for a bill to regularize, that is, to actually create a legal structure for the dispensaries that have become very vital in supplying medical cannabis to citizens out there. One other thing we're going to do in California that's going to be very exciting is we will be launching a campaign to have the state government basically in cooperation with federal raids on legitimate outlets for providing medical marijuana for patients in California. So this sort of non-cooperation statute is probably a new area that I'm pretty excited about.
And Ray, in talking about California, we just did a piece with NORML's director, Alan St. Pierre, on the camp eradication program there. It's a record number of outdoor seizures this year. Now, we know most of this is hemp ditchweed now.
Well, so much of the government's anti-marijuana program is just theater, and large outdoor operations look good. Unfortunately, the actual result of this has not been to reduce supply or to necessarily disrupt the supply system. What it's done is it's forced the cultivation of this relatively benign crop from public areas, from places you can be seen, to places like neighborhood homes and into the suburbs. So I think even the government's own statistics tend to show that the camp program, that is the eradication program, has produced more theater than actual impact on supply. What it has done is move supply just a little more underground and a little more into the suburban locations.
Indeed, we saw this government report just last week showing marijuana prices will likely decline. So these eradication programs really aren't having any impact on the real marijuana market.
Oh, absolutely. Their own figures tend to show that. And that's one reason they're able to have the big photo ops, is because there's such a large supply being grown, because there's a demand, because people recognize marijuana basically as medically beneficial in some cases, and certainly in other contexts not nearly as harmful as alcohol or other drugs. So there is a large supply, and the government's figures tend to simply confirm that. One of the interesting things is, one of the other aspects has been cultivation is moving in some cases from high-profile eradication states like California to places like Tennessee and Alabama. So I don't think you can anymore eradicate marijuana production than we could have prevented people from brewing gin in their bathtub during Prohibition. Now, let me just mention one other state thing, if I can, though, Chris. I almost forgot about this. Very exciting, because it's a southern state. This past week in Tennessee, a bill that had been introduced in the Tennessee House was brought before what's called a summer study, and this is basically an extensive committee hearing. We participated in that. Representatives from Tennessee NORML participated in that, and the result was very good. So we are looking at Tennessee next year as well as being a state where a medical marijuana bill may make some movement.
Now, we've definitely been keeping up with Bernie Ellis there in Tennessee, and also those Election Day wins in Haley, Idaho on those ballot initiatives. Do you think that, such a strong showing of support in such a rural, mid-country area like Haley, Idaho could hint at even broader national support for marijuana reform in general these days?
I think this is the case, and this often happens with social issues where the public is moving faster than the legislative process. Politicians tend to be reactive, and the experience of the last 10 or 15 years has trained a lot of politicians to be very afraid of issues they perceive to have a moral content that will upset traditional type folks. The public, however, has continued to sort of move along on this. So I think the public is ahead of the politicians, and when the public gets a chance to express itself, as say in Haley, Idaho, where you have a direct referendum, that sort of gets manifested. What I expect to see in the next couple years is a little bit of catching up on the public policy side. I have no doubt that after the 2008 elections, if you and I are having this conversation in the middle of 2009, 2 years from now, medical marijuana will be legal in the entire northeastern United States. If we don't get New York this year, we'll get it after the 2008 elections. New Hampshire will join us, I'm almost sure, in 2009. Massachusetts will be totally decriminalized. We have an initiative on the ballot in Michigan, which will probably pass for medical marijuana. So we'll have Michigan, Minnesota, and Illinois in the Great Lakes. We'll be picking up Arizona next year for medical marijuana in the West. And it's going to look like, wow, there's this revolution. People have suddenly decided overnight that this is something that we should take a second look at, but that's not really the case. I think what we're seeing is the processes the legislative process finally catching up with public opinion.
Righto, Ray. It's always good to hear about everything that's moving forward out there. I really appreciate you taking time to speak with us here on the Audio Stash today, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thank you so much, Chris. You guys take care.
Thank you again, Ray. Ray Warren is the Director of State Policies at the Marijuana Policy Project. We have links to him and MPP's state policy programs right up on our website today at normalaudiostash.com. Stay tuned. We got a little music today coming up. Have you ever wondered what Amsterdam is all about? Don't just read about the culture that has accepted cannabis. Experience it firsthand with CS Travel's Sensible Amsterdam Tour with NORML. Travel to one of Europe's most beautiful cities this January for an educational and recreational visit to a city that regulates cannabis like alcohol. CS Travel has arranged an exclusive visit for reform-minded Americans that includes a private tour of some of Amsterdam's most renowned coffee shops, educational seminars with coffee shop proprietors, local law enforcement, members of the Cannabis Retailers Association, and NORML staff. Entertainment includes a special evening at the Boom Chicago Comedy Club, canal tours, visits to the city's many museums, including the world-famous Van Gogh Museum. Don't just wonder about Amsterdam, experience the beauty and freedom of this unique city firsthand with CS Travel and NORML's Sensible Amsterdam Tour. Pricing information is available online at coffeeshoptravel.com. That's coffeeshoptravel.com. Or call toll-free at 800-816-1846. That's 800-816-1846. Be a sensible American. Visit Amsterdam with CS Travel and NORML this January. Call 1-800-816-1846 right now to book your trip. More information is available at normal.org.
Hey, is it 420 yet? This is Rick Cusick from High Times Magazine, and you're tuned into NORML's Audio Stash.
And we were tickled to find some of this group's music up on the Independent Online Distribution Alliance this week. Here's the Cowboy Junkies with this song, I Don't Get It. We have links to the Cowboy Junkies at the Independent Online Distribution Alliance right up on our website at normalaudiostash.com.
Break you listening to NORML's Daily Audio Stash.
That's the Cowboy Junkies with I Don't Get It there. Here on NORML's Daily Audio Stash. Of course, we have links to them and their IOTA account right up on our website today at normalaudiostash.com.
76% of Americans no longer support arresting and jailing marijuana smokers, and nearly as many support the medical patients having access to medical marijuana. And over 80% of our citizens now believe the war on drugs is an ineffective failure. So the question is, when will the government's misguided war on adult marijuana smokers finally end? When? Simple. When you and your like-minded friends, family, and coworkers get involved with an organization such as the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, also known as NORML. My name is Keith Stropp, and I founded the organization in 1970. Contact us at NORML, toll-free, 888-67-NORML, or by visiting the organization's up-to-date webpage at www.norml.org.
Listening to NORML's Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Make sure you visit our website at normalaudiostash.com. That's NORMLAUDIOSTASH.com for more information about every day's show. I'm your host, Chris Goldstein. Thanks for listening today. See you at 4:20 tomorrow.